So thanks again for everybody coming. In terms of the agenda for today, it's our usual process of slides not advancing for me. Okay, so hopefully I got that worked out. So again, just going to do a quick overview of what is the Olmsted Community Alliance. Then we're going to dive right into ongoing projects and updates. We've got a lot of them, so I'm going to be doing them in chunks of 3 and then offering opportunity for comment, then another 3, and we'll zip that along so that then we can follow up on the issues that came up at the last meeting. We will again do some opportunity for dialogue and follow up on those. And then equally important, getting opportunity for any new issues that have come up in the last 3 months on the table, so that again, we can prepare them and we can have a good conversation about those next meeting, and then we'll wrap up. So the Olmsted Community Alliance, again, its purpose is very, very simple. It's just about strengthening the relationship between the community, the Olmsted communities around all of our beloved parks, and the Conservancy and the city of Buffalo. The objectives there are that you guys are able to represent your community, an opportunity for just general dialogue, all in support of making improvements, implementing improvement projects out in the parks, and then, continuing our ability to build awareness about the Conservancy, what we do, continuing to engage in user outreach, in sort of new and effective ways, and encourage people to get involved and steward our special Olmsted parks. So we're here tonight talking about Delaware, but the last 4 weeks, I've been in different communities having the same conversation. We do these district by district so that we can have an in-depth conversation about what's happening in your neighborhood park. But the goal is, again, that we will sort of evolve this into a sort of a system-wide conversation so that we're talking, community to community about, our great Olmsted history and legacy. But again, your role is just to be an ambassador in the room, but then also in between meetings, sharing this information. We can only do so much, accomplish so much in 90 minutes, but if we're continuing to bring people in, continuing to raise awareness and communicate, everything goes smoother, everything goes better. So get more people in the room, and then also just get engaged with our work and the parks. So in terms of the people involved, you've got the 3 main cast of characters here in the front. I'm Brian Dole. There's my whole face. I'm the Director of Planning and Advocacy. We've got Zach Garland, our Community Outreach Manager, and Z, our Marketing Communication Specialist. They're very helpful in terms of all the outreach, all of the connections, all of the notes, all of the everything. And I just get to stand up here and look smart. So you will also meet on a probably regular basis as we move this forward. Stephanie Crockett, our Executive Director, Greg Robinson, our Director of Park Administration, Katie Stevenson, our Director of Development, and Bob Stotz, our Director of Operations. In terms of building this conversation out, we're going to try and sort of build in like a focus in each district throughout the year. So I'm thinking for our next meeting, which is going to be in April and May, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the development and fundraising and exciting events happening, specifically in the 200th year. And then that third quarter, we're actually do a little bit more of a focus on operations. So we'll see how these things go. But again, we really want to sort of broaden the awareness of our whole team. And then specifically here in the Delaware district, we're doing a little bit of restructuring through the year. So our interim district supervisor, Keith Cahill, and our 4-person Mike Canderas. If you're out in the parks, you've probably seen them from time to time. There's also folks that work system-wide, so it's worth getting to know them. We've got our forestry manager, Mike Sawyer, takes care of all the trees. Our facilities manager, Charlie, takes care of all the buildings. Our specialty garden, so the rose garden and Japanese garden, we've got Andrew. And then the circles, that's Eileen. So depending on where your little favorite area is, you might want to meet one of these folks too. So please say hi. So again, that's basically the roundabout way of what we're trying to do. The idea is that we're having these meetings every quarter, so we're not solving all the world's problems in any meeting. And we're really trying to sort of focus on coming back to you with the same projects over and over and over. So by the time we're implementing them, you've heard about them 3 times and you're all on board and we're all engaged. We all love it. We're all supporting it. And there's no surprises either way. That's really what we want. So as we move into projects, again, these are things I introduced last meeting and our progress. So starting over at the Marcy Casino, City of Buffalo had some money, didn't turn out to be enough money, so they've secured additional money that will basically be able to move forward on reconstructing the steps around the exterior of the Marcy Casino. If you use them, some of them are in more disrepair than others, but we'll be able to move forward on that project. And that is again planned for this year. Money is in place. Additional money going into that building, secured by the Conservancy through our state senator, Sean Ryan, is going to address the doors and windows and some of the masonry issues. Again, if you take a real close look at that building, there's a lot of masonry challenges, things that need to be repointed. And also the doors, there's a lot of rust, a lot of issues, a lot of security issues on this building. So again, we're still in paperwork on that, but we anticipate by the end of this coming year to be moving forward on that project into 2023. We over the winter, as sort of due to as a part of our contractual obligation, put the RFP for the concessionaire of the Marcy Casino back out to public bid. We are sticking with Magnolia and the Terrace Restaurant in terms of operating that building. It's been a great relationship and we're excited that it's going to continue. And just wrapping up a little bit of the details in terms of the agreement, but things should be in place for another great year and years to come with that concessionaire. And the last project before I take a little break is the grand staircase. If you're familiar with the steps down from Lincoln Parkway to the lake, the gateway to one of the most beautiful and recognizable parts of our region, they are in severe disrepair, in need of historic restoration, historic grade, sort of dismantling and reassembling to rebuild the structural integrity. We are in the middle of a fundraising campaign on that effort with the goal of moving that forward as the season breaks. We do have significant money dedicated to the project through the great work of our fundraising team. And we do have a request in through the Buffalo and Erie County Standing Committee of the Greenway Fund to achieve our goal and move this project forward. So we are hopeful that everything's going to line up and hopeful that we'll be able to, again, move forward on that project, which will, of course, mean there'll be a period of time you can't use those stairs getting down to the lake from Lincoln Parkway. But, the end result will be a much better condition that'll serve us for generations to come. So, again, with Marcy Casino stuff and the grand staircase, there's a couple projects and some updates. If anyone needs any clarifications on these projects, I'll pause and give the opportunity there. Anybody at home as well. We do again have a lot of great stuff to talk about. So if we can move it along, I will certainly take the opportunity too. All right. With that, more plans for investment. The Delaware Park Point of the Meadow. So hopefully you all know and love this facility. A few years back, we were able to invest in a new historic tile roof and some additional exterior improvements. But certainly through the COVID era, we've learned how important, hygienic and easily operating interior facilities, we certainly missed them through the height of the COVID era and them having to be closed. So hoping to, again, another request through the Greenway Fund for investment in upgrading for ADA accessibility, again, for sort of ease and hygiene, as well as some sustainability upgrades in terms of, how we're using water, how we're flushing toilets, enhancements to the entire interior of the Point of the Meadow restroom. Again, this is a funding request and we're hopeful that we'll be able to move forward on that by the middle of the year, but fingers crossed on that one. Other sort of topics before we take another pause is Meadow Road entrance. Through generous donations from our Common Council member, Councilman Farrelletto, we've got resources to kind of spruce up from a landscape standpoint this entrance area. So specifically that triangular bed in front of the juicery, which is sort of newly occupied with a new concessionaire, bringing back the old juicery name. And if you can see the gravel pathways on either side of the roadway, we're able to refresh those last fall. But in the spring, we're going to be kicking off a project to sort of fix up and again, just sort of give another sort of good first impression of entrance to the park with improvements at that triangle. We will be sort of diving a little bit more into the configuration and all the barricades and those sorts of things as we move into the conversation about the ring road and the future of the ring road's use. I know there were a number of concerns brought up last year or last meeting with regard to sort of the condition, the positioning, and all of the barricades. So again, sort of moving forward in this process, some of those things will be able to be cleared up. However, in addition to this project here in this location, we're also looking at a landscape enhancement along Nottingham. This is again to sort of help with buffering between the neighborhood, the neighbors, and the activities within the park along Nottingham with some understory and enhancements through our Olmsted Natural Area program. So in the spring, it's going to be a big volunteer project where we'll be planting saplings and wildflowers and again, sort of enhancing our edge condition and sort of restoring the ecological value of our park areas and reducing some of our mowing. We are going to get into at the next meeting a deeper discussion about our Olmsted Natural Area maintenance standards, because that again is something that is an important part of implementing any of these projects, is making sure that we're on top of consistent quality maintenance, taking care of our quarterly responsibilities in terms of removing invasives, seasonal mowing, clearing, enhancing, adding to. It's all a part of the deal. So we're going to dive a little bit more detail into that at our next meeting. But we're moving forward in terms of implementing some of that planting work this spring. So with that, again, I'll pause again for any discussion on these three topics. We've got someone in the room, and I gotta mute myself, right? Yeah.
I'm Gordon Panic. I was just a quick question with regard to what extent does the city of Buffalo Parks Department or whatever they have support the Conservancy? How do you get support for these projects from them, or to what extent do they back you up?
Okay, so great question. We are going to dive into more detail on this at our next meeting when we talk about more of our fundraising and organizational structure. But in quick terms, we have a public-private partnership with the city of Buffalo. We are the nonprofit partner who does the maintenance, and we contract with the city of Buffalo. The funding they provide for maintenance covers about 50% of our operating budget. So we do additional fundraising, but there's a lot of in-kind support. There's a lot of services and supplies and infrastructure assistance that the city gives on top of that, those resources to hire our own staff. So it's very much a good functioning partnership of the city and a nonprofit. So again, we work hand in hand, and I think support is a great way to just describe it.
Does any capital project funding come from the?
Or you have to raise your own money for specific capital projects?
So in terms of the project I just went through, so some of those projects are city funded, like the STEPS project. There's a good amount of money coming through the city for capital projects invested all throughout the system. The great benefit of the nonprofit partner is we can do additional work to bring in other resources other than city resources to the table for investment in the park. So the city definitely every year there's a capital improvement program where they invest, significant money all throughout the city, city buildings, schools, also libraries and parks,
Parks is in that.
Absolutely. Yep. Any other questions in the room or at home? All right. Hopefully I didn't create too much of an intense start to this project about how much I was trying to get through. I certainly encourage conversation, but again, this is exactly what this meeting is about. It's about, there's a fair amount of stuff that we want to make sure you guys know. So being able to give you guys these updates is very important to us. So moving along, maybe. Okay. So a few other sort of major topics that have been moving forward, again, incrementally. Golf in Delaware Park. Golf, sort of a very beloved feature of Delaware Park with a long history. The Conservancy over the winter brought in a consultant, the National Golf Foundation, to provide us with a study to sort of look at sort of optimizing our facilities, making some modifications, just recommendations to improve the business and improve the sort of quality of not only the golfer, but the park user condition. We just got that report last week. We're doing some internal review of the draft. Then we're gonna, as part of our public-private partnership, review these recommendations with the City of Buffalo. And I think by the time we get around to our next meeting, we'll be able to share a fair amount of those recommendations that came out of that report. But again, we're always focused on, enhancing the use of the parks for today, with also having a lot of respect and a lot of thought put into, how we again are restoring Olmsted's vision. So it's a great balance and provides a lot of great opportunities for improvement. Okay, this is for the Route 198. So hot off the presses is this update. I got this from the project manager just a couple hours ago. So in terms of the 198 study, it has been, for those of you who didn't make the last meeting or are unaware of the process moving forward, it's been updated to a discussion of Region Central. So they're no longer focusing on, how do we fix this road? It's sort of how do we look at this community and what service and role does the road play within it? So this process has been moving forward since March of last year, so a little under a year. There has been a lot of research and information gathering. There was community vision building. There was basically a process of establishing goals and metrics. And the next step, which is right there in the middle, we are a little bit behind the timeline. However, they have prepared and are completing their internal review this week of 4 design scenarios. So this is basically looking at all of the information that they've gathered and making some recommendations, specifically for Route 198 corridor, but the supporting elements, looking at smart mobility option application to all of the possible scenarios. And after they do that internal review, they're going to bring these 4 scenarios recommendations to the stakeholder group. And then following that, they're going to bring it to the public and there'll be good public dialogue. So I encourage everyone to get engaged. The website is at the bottom of the page there. But basically we are at the point where the goals and the metrics have been set And now they're starting to figure out, okay, how do we want to suggest moving forward with a few options on the table. So that review will be thorough, take the public input, evaluate that, against all of the goals and metrics established. And then following that process, then they will select the optimal scenario, do some additional testing and refinement, make a final recommendation, and then they will move on to an implementation approach of that sort of publicly supported, wildly successful, unanimously agreed upon path forward. So it's been a good process in our mind at the Conservancy, representative of the Skagit Corridor Coalition, a coalition of stakeholders along the whole corridor. But we're very excited and very interested to see what are these 4 scenarios and how well do they align with our vision, because the Conservancy, along with the Skagit Corridor Coalition, put out, again, probably about 9 or 10 months ago, a vision for the future of the corridor. So this was, again, not a design, not a engineered plan, but really just a vision for how we can maximize the benefit, how we can undo the damage, and how we can really restore not only our Olmsted network, our creek corridors, rebuild our communities, but we really just laid out a vision that looks at, again, reconnecting our parks and restoring our creeks and lakes, highlighting a couple of those visuals for Delaware Park. Again, you can learn more about the coalition's work and our vision at the sccoalition.net website. But again, both of these processes and pretty much every project I'm going to talk about benefits from your involvement. Basically, if you get involved, get engaged, have your voice heard, the projects only benefit from that sort of participation. So with that, I'm going to pause there, again, sort of recapping on a big conversation about golf and some work we've got moving forward. And then as well, really important moving forward, a process, again, being led by the Greater Buffalo Regional Transportation Council. That's our sort of local transportation planners on behalf of New York State, who is the owner of Route 198. Again, this is a process we're all engaged in, and we're really excited about the momentum thus far. Any thoughts, comments, or questions? Yeah. Oh, John?
So first off, is this presentation going to be on your website? So we don't have to jot down things from it. We can just get online and look at this.
Yeah. I think we can. Yeah, we're planning this on presentations and the meeting minutes for each meeting.
But this presentation we'll be able to see right directly. Okay, good. And I guess specifically then, I think you mentioned then that the plans for the Skagit are about, what, 5 months behind? You said they're in that middle thing, and they envisioned to finish in February of 22. So right now that was October, so that's about 5 months away. So we expect it will be finalized then 5 months from now. Does that make sense?
So the way I got to do this, I got to unmute so I can answer your question. So like you were waiting for me to answer. But yeah, so I don't want to speak for them in terms of how much they're going to try and accelerate. You can definitely tell from the facts that they are several months, probably 4 months behind the timeline that they had said in terms of them putting out the scenarios, in the end of fall. So yeah, I mean, it's a good assumption to be made, but whether they want to try and accelerate that, I'll leave it up to them because they're the ones running the show. Comments online?
So from Laura Mangan, at what point will these community groups get a chance to review the 4 options?
So again, unfortunately, in the update I got from Hal Morris today, he did not give me dates, but there will be a stakeholder meeting. There's a stakeholder group of representatives along the corridor, and then there will be a public meeting scheduled. I think this is the 3rd or 4th public meeting, but again, going to have to pay attention. We will circulate that information as soon as we get it. That's really what the Skijaquada Corridor Coalition is all about. But the best information, the most up to date, is going to be on the website gbnrtc.org/region central, because they have not set those dates yet, but they should be relatively soon. Good question.
From Dan Katzel, is there any chance we can have no golf in the meadow 1 day a week so people can safely enjoy the meadow, visit the graves of the War of 1812 soldiers, the city's oldest living tree, etc.?
And I think that's a very interesting idea. I personally need to admit that I haven't reviewed the results of this report in detail, but again, sort of thinking through moving forward on operations of the golf course and the plans. These are the sorts of conversations that this report's going to stimulate sort of further detail on, and we'll be putting things into action. So that's a great idea. And I think we'll sort of bring that to the table and probably have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation on it next meeting, which will be May 4th. You'll hear about that later. It's on your agenda, but our next meeting will be May 4th in this room. Yeah. All right. Let me get through this too fast. All right, so pretty meaty topic here. So we're just going to talk about Gates Circle for a little while. In terms of variety of projects moving forward with Gates Circle, the city of Buffalo has sort of a very large paving contract in place, and it's my understanding that as soon as the weather breaks, Delaware Avenue restriping project will be moving forward relatively soon. That is a project that is going from North Street all the way up to the S curves to Forest, and it's going to be a road diet down to a 3-lane configuration. So that means going from 2 travel lanes to 1 with a central turn lane, which frees up space for bike lanes, and very much so simplifies the sort of transportation situation at Gates Circle. So that is a big step in the right direction in terms of traffic calming at Gates Circle. So that is funded and moving forward. Additionally, the Arts Commission has selected the consultant who is going to be doing the restoration of the light luminaires. That is, again, an Arts Commission project, funded and moving forward. And it is in the plans for 2023 for, bringing these light standards back. And the city of Buffalo is lining up resources to do the installation of these light standards, as well as some additional masonry repairs to the granite of the basin itself. So exciting things moving forward with regards to Gates Circle, both from a transportation standpoint and from a sort of sprucing up, restoring the masonry and the beautiful architectural elements. And again, there is an ongoing conversation about the next step we want to take in terms of the traffic calming and increasing pedestrian safety through the circle, and hopefully one day getting back into the center of the Rotary to enjoy this beautiful setting. So again, there are conversations about a phase 2 of traffic calming involving some great leaders out of the Canterbury Woods residents, the city of Buffalo, the Conservancy, and others that I think you can look forward to hearing more about in the future, in terms of future planning and future enhancements to Gates Circle. So exciting conversations happening there, and also some great projects in the works. That I think is, yeah, we're going to pause and talk Gates Circle if there's any questions or comments.
Are the fountains currently working? Do they work?
Yep, the fountains are all currently functional, or at least they were as of fall last year, and the city be popping them back on in the spring.
Would you clarify if the restructuring of Delaware Avenue goes all the full length of Delaware Avenue north of the park as well, or just that southern part?
So in terms of the study area that the city undertook, it was from south of the S curves. So the project area begins at Forest in terms of this phase. So in terms of the repaving, I think that was probably the limits of the repaving project. So that was the limits of their study in terms of changing anything. So that's as far as the project goes. That's as far as any modifications go. And I mean, further north, I think it will really much, in terms of, I guess, thinking about this 198 project, it's not just going to be that thin ribbon of roadway cutting east-west, but all the sort of implications of all the intersecting roads. So I mean, that's probably more where long-term decisions will be made about the S curves will be really much in relation to the 198, the Region Central project. Any other thoughts in the room or at home? Got some at home?
So we have from Dan, the tire marks and lack thereof illustrate areas where we can reclaim green space in places like this, referring to the aerial view of Gate Circle. And following that, he commented that, or you can also use those areas for bike lanes and on the circle. And from Laura, how do we give input into the Gate Circle signage and lineage directly to the streets commissioner or through the Gate Circle staff member of the Conservancy?
See that last one again.
How do we give input to the Gate Circle signage and lineage? Is it directly to the street? Lineage. 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 Laura, if you would like to share your comment further, that you can also speak out loud if you would like.
So in terms of Dan's comment, that is a great point, and that's kind of what the striping plan for this first phase does, is it really narrows down the travel lanes and sort of identifies all of this extra space. And great news, I didn't mention it, I mentioned it last meeting, but the city of the Conservancy funded a cultural landscape report for Gate Circle, which identifies all of the significant features of the circle. And it really did identify that there is a great opportunity in between the curbs. So the curb of the central rotary and the exterior curbs to do a lot of things to improve traffic calming that would not disturb historic integrity. So having that study in our back pocket as we move forward on trying to get funding for additional, significant traffic calming, that was sort of a great thing to have documented. So that I think will sort of make Dan very happy if he's walking through this area in the future when we get these resources in place. Do we have a clarification?
Sorry, there was my mistake. So basically, she was asking about road markings, like yep. So yes, striping. Is that right, Laura? Yep. And
Yes,
also
it's the lines and the signs. We have really, we have too many variations on signs and
So
traffic circles.
unfortunately, and I think this is again what we're trying to avoid moving forward, but we can't necessarily solve every problem in the past. That process in terms of the restriping plan, there were, if I recall, a couple public meetings over a year ago that the city held on Zoom. I might not have all my facts straight, but there was a public engagement process, but it was over a year ago in terms of the details of that striping. Thankfully, we think of this as the phase one. I think contacting the city, if you want to follow up with me directly, I can put you in touch with the project manager to see if we can get more details on that. But in terms of the striping plan, you know, the project went out to bid last year. They just didn't get to the implementation. So I think it's pretty far down the pipeline in terms of modifying any of the striping at this point, considering the project's going to start in the spring. But you know, certainly, you know, this is what we want to deal with through this committee, is sort of bring this information, you know, to a broader public and make sure everyone it gets engaged in these at the right time, not after the window has closed. But I think in general,
Avenue bus will interfere or could interfere with the use of the bike lanes for bicycling?
those are great questions. I think in terms of the space that is getting brought back from the road diet, I'm not sure it provided space for protected bike lanes. I gotta say, I haven't looked at these drawings in quite a while. They do, if they have the space in terms of the travel lanes, the parking lanes, more than that minimum 5 feet. They typically do give that to the pedestrian and put in that second hash. I'd have to look back at the drawings in terms of say if it's in this project or not, but sometimes that's just a limitation to the minimum widths of everything else out there. I know City of Buffalo, in terms of this project, you know, does coordinate with all the other agencies, but in terms of the nitty gritty of an impact of that bus, you know, I think those are, good things to sort of keep bringing up to those agencies and coordinating with them directly in terms of not just are the facilities properly marked and spaced, but, you know, are their drivers abiding by and, you know, doing their best job to get out of the travel lane. You know, sometimes that's more of a driver issue than an infrastructure issue. But those are great conversations. We are excited, you know, in terms of the next thing I'm going to talk about, in terms of some interest in discussing traffic calming and pedestrian safety throughout a lot of our other Olmsted circles and spaces. And I think we're going to sort of accelerate that conversation, and I'll be able to get into a little more detail about it. But I think through those sorts of conversations, we can maybe invite NFTA to the table and sort of have a little more detailed conversation in this group. You know, I think we're always trying to sort of not only build the conversation well between the community and the Conservancy, but where we can, in certain cases, bring in the police department or bring in, you know, other agencies that, you know, have an impact. I think that's something we can explore going further in terms of if that's a significant issue that you're experiencing and we can be helpful in coordinating that conversation. That's really what this is all about. Yeah.
I just wanted to second that, like the call for better bike safety and bike advocacy, and that if there's a way that the Olmsted Parks Conservancy could play a greater role in promoting bicycling and ensuring the safety of bicycle, you know, Nottingham, for instance, we know that intersection of Nottingham and Delaware is incredibly difficult for pedestrians and bicyclists, but, you know, because the geography that Olmsted covers is its own geography, you know, and then there are others that go beyond. But if Olmsted Parks Conservancy could be a leader on that front, that would be really great.
Yeah, great. No, great comment. And, you know, we do, I mean, being a nonprofit, being in the advocacy world, you know, we do coordinate extensively with Go Bike Buffalo. They coordinate really well with the City of Buffalo on the bike master plan and the implementation. But again, there's a lot of priorities. There's a lot of places that I think, the Conservancy could kind of, again, weigh in a little more on the implementation of that bike master plan. So that's a great comment. And yeah, we'll take that back. Any others? So again, we got Gate Circle, some exciting stuff, some system-wide projects moving forward, system-wide signage. So hopefully some of you guys got to experience before we got into the heavy snow, our augmented reality. There was a site in Front Park and also the Quarry Garden just outside this building, closer to the Ring Road. A very cool sort of new idea in terms of our signage plan. But we are planning to do a refresh, a refurbishment of all of our existing signage out in the parks in partnership with the City of Buffalo and implementation of the full extent of the signage and wayfinding and interpretation master plan. So some minor modifications to the existing signs in terms of a sort of a nice, a greener green in the way we think about it, going from a green that somewhat fades to more of a teal green. So a stronger green, and as well an enhancement of sort of some of the Olmsted characteristics in terms of the Olmsted parks and the non-Olmsted parks. But excited to move that forward with long overdue investment in refurbishing all of our signs and taking it the next step in terms of helping people get around the city, get around the parks, identify the facility they're looking for, and also, our main mission, the interpretation of the history of these parks for the park user. Additionally, system-wide investment in ash tree removal. We got a grant from the DEC last year, executed over the winter to remove a number of ash trees that unfortunately succumbed to the emerald ash borer and needed to come down. Roughly $95,000 worth of tree work done throughout the park system, taking down a lot of these standing dead ash. And in the spring, just going to be some turf repair to wrap up that project. So with that, unless there's a few other questions, we'll move on to the park issues. So this was conversations that we got started on last meeting and are going to continue to evolve over the coming meetings and months. But a big thing moving forward, in partnership with the City of Buffalo, we're going to be launching a park user survey for both South Park and Delaware Park with regard to the experience of the Ring Road being closed for the last year and a half or so, and plans for the future. So again, we want to make this a very inclusive process, hearing everyone's experiences, hearing everyone's concerns, whether this was the greatest thing that's ever happened or something that presented challenges in your life in terms of getting to the parks, getting to facilities that you love. The survey is going to be up. It's going to be well advertised. Again, it's going to ask some basic questions, allow us to gather data, and help the city make a determination in advance of this summer for sort of a more permanent solution in terms of traffic on the Ring Road. So again, this survey is in its final phase of edits and will be made public throughout the city in the coming weeks. And we really, I guess, want to start with a dialogue here in this room. And we encourage that to continue through the survey and online. And then, it will come back into this room in 3 months when we revisit this and we sort of start to plan, what are we hearing? What have we heard? What are we thinking is the right approach to move forward? So I want to kind of open this conversation up for a little bit of a deeper dive into how people in this room and on Zoom feel about the last 18 months of the Ring Road. Folks at home, again, remember, chat is just as good as raising your hand in terms of getting the comment on the record for further discussion, but we got somebody in the room looking to speak up.
Just hold it like this? Okay. Yeah, so thanks for having this meeting. This has been really helpful to understand what's going on with the parks. My name's Erica. I live over on Woodward. And, you know, I really enjoyed the ring road being closed to cars. You know, we know cars are dangerous, right? I mean, that's why you need a license to drive one, and somebody got killed here. So we're all aware of this. And I just find that it's very helpful that we can all spread out and recreate, and there's room for the cyclists and the pedestrians and people with their basketballs. Everybody has like a place to go now. Whereas before we're all crammed into this one space. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate in my opinion. I know this is unpopular opinion that the whole park is taken over by a golf course. So we really only have the ring road to recreate on. And so I think that it's being closed to cars has been really a blessing.
I completely agree with Erica. In that the center of the park is really taken up by the golf course, and it seems as though the portion that's open to the public and available for sort of open green space and regular use is the ring road. I think the city should take into consideration what portions of the park are actually available for users. I also wanted to ask, in regards to usage from the past year and a half, if there have been any sort of analysis of how much use it has been getting, or statistics towards that, that either you or the city are taking into account when considering this as well.
Unfortunately, in terms of having data on the last year and a half, it's really only sort of perception as opposed to having really good counts of that data. That was something that I'm unfortunately, at least for me, speaking for me personally, thought about a little too late in the process to implement and be able to get the resources together to conduct some sort of study. So again, I think it's going to be the survey and the sort of dialogue is going to be really helpful. In addition to, I think the perceptions that we're finding in terms of the benefits versus the challenges that have been created. Certainly is.
And then just dovetailing off that really quick, in regards to the survey, I assume that'll be available through your website, the Olmsted Conservancy website as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Cheryl. This is my first time at a meeting like this. So if you've covered this in the past, excuse me about it, but I just wanted to echo for a third time how much I am so happy that Ring Road has been closed to car traffic for the last 18 months. It's been a real godsend, and I'm just speaking anecdotally with other people in the neighborhood, how much they've come to rely on it as, you know, a place to gather with friends and family, or to just, you know, get some exercise and activity after the end of the day. So just a question, is it even on the table to open the ring road back up to car traffic? Is that a possibility in the near future?
Yes, that's basically what the survey is leaving on the table. It's really all the scenarios about how to move forward, whether it's can the pandemic didn't happen, go back to how it was, leave it exactly how it is with some modification, with, you know, some more, you know, permanent modifications, and then anything in between in terms of the sections of the ring road, and, you know, the ones sort of closer to Agassi Circle, closer to the zoo, closer to the baseball fields, you know, basically leaving all the options on the table to sort of see what we hear in terms of feedback from the public.
I'm with Assemblymember John Rivera's office. So we sometimes hear from constituents who contact us about their park usage. So if that's something that you want us to share, this survey with anybody who reaches out to us about this particular issue, we can do that.
You work at the mayor's office?
No, Assemblymember John Rivera in the state assembly. Yeah, not the mayor's office.
Yeah, certainly any additional data that I know the city gets a lot of calls and and they're tracking all of their data. But that's a great point that we should be reaching out to the other levels of government, make sure we're getting anyone who's heard from their constituents on this issue. So that is a great point that we'll just make sure that we're roping in is outreach to all levels of government for feedback, as well as the public.
Period.
How long is it?
Or how long is it
How long is it going to
open?
be open for?
Yeah.
I think right now the plan is at least 2 months. I think maybe closer to 3 months. So we're gonna actually, I think, what month are we in now? April, March, little more than 2 months, I think, is the plan.
To us about the park, we can direct them to the survey. And then if we collect any data on our end, we'll just send it your way too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But yeah, let's follow up.
Thank you.
So affirm everything that's been said so far in this discussion period and express a little bit of just a concern or a note of caution about how the survey is constructed, because we know about surveys that depending on how things are worded, they can create, they can sort of prejudice certain kinds of answers. And and the relationship between the ring road and golf has been mentioned as a safe space to recreate. And I know from a previous conversation that there was a previous golf survey that went specifically to people who sign up for golf in Delaware Park, which are one particular constituency, but maybe not necessarily a representative constituency of everyone who uses the park. And I also wanted to express a kind of concern about whether the survey is entirely an online survey, because not all communities are as adept or fluent in navigating those systems. And I was, so I have a question about how what your plans are for reaching communities that maybe, for instance, aren't even represented at this meeting, but whom we know we see using the ring road on a regular basis, and whom we anecdotally have seen so much more, in the park since the start of the pandemic. And then I also wanted to second the idea of like not really loving that so much of the park was dedicated to golf, and the safety issue associated with golf of stray golf balls. And I wanted to say that when I moved to Buffalo in 2016, my children were very small, and smaller, and we, of course, were often on the ring road learning how to use bicycles. And it was really deeply terrifying when there were cars in the park to realize that at any moment there was always like, stay to the left, how terrifying it is that you're so vulnerable, you and your soft shelled body, with these, speeding vehicles. And there was a speed limit which was never observed at the time. So it has been such a reprieve and so beautiful to have the road open. And I would encourage, again, dedicated bike lanes and really promoting non-motorized activity as much as possible. It's such a value to the community.
A lot of very well stated points there. In terms of the survey wording, I think I would appreciate the feedback when it gets public, but we were very conscious about how we were wording things. It's gone through a lot of editing, in terms of preparation. So I feel like we've done a pretty good job of sort of gathering good information and sort of stating things properly. You said so many things. I'm trying to wrap my brain around. Oh yeah, yes. So if you have any recommendations about where to place paper copies, I'm going to get into some of our outreach plans. We're going to use the same outreach approach for these meetings. But we do work with Board of Block Clubs. We do work with the public libraries. We're going to identify a place to put paper copies, and coordinate how we're going to get those mailed back to us. But if you have recommendations email them to us, and we could get everyone in the city to respond to this survey. That would be the perfect survey. Yeah, that's, I think, the great role of the Conservancy. Like I mentioned, we're doing 5 of these meetings. So I've got 5 separate outreach plans that cover the churches, the schools, the libraries, the block clubs, in each one of these communities around our Olmsted parks. So we got a good city coverage in terms of our existing infrastructure. And then all of our political partners can help.
Everybody who's spoken so far and say how much of a blessing it has been to have the ring road close to traffic during the last year and a half. I just kind of want to identify its essential nature to pedestrian and bicycle traffic in that area. For example, it's the only way for pedestrians and bicycles to really avoid that confusing intersection at Amherst and Parkside. And then also it gives bicycles and pedestrians the opportunity to avoid Amherst Street between Parkside and Nottingham, where the road is very, very narrow and there's only one sidewalk on the north side of the street. And then it's also the only opportunity for pedestrians and bicycles to avoid the intersection at Nottingham and Delaware by using the path over the bridge and then over by the tennis courts. Other than that, we are forced to go through that terrible intersection right at the S-curves.
Ask, following up, for the publicity for the survey, are you going to be providing any sort of informational PDFs on your webpage? So say we want to promote it at, I don't know, our business, nonprofit, et cetera. Is there anything that you're going to be providing on the Olmsted website that we can print out, post in, our bulletin board, et cetera, that type of material? Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that obviously you're doing so much outreach for the survey, but if there was some sort of promotional material that was easy to download, easy to print, we could, I work at Buff State, I can put it up in the library, like those types of things. But if there was something that I think everyone here feels rather strongly about this, if you can get more people to fill out a survey, if you can sort of motivate the people that care about it to do outreach for you, that's also beneficial.
Yep, it'll be just like with these social media flyers. There's the physical flyers that puts them up around the park before the meeting. So we'll do the same exact format for all of the survey type information. Yeah, for sure. All right, so we got one comment in here. I don't know, Z, if you're getting a lot of comments online. I think I do need to move this along. So I think if people online could put their comments in chat, I'd appreciate that. And I think we're gonna have to move to the next topic once we finish the room. Sorry to the people at home on Zoom.
Here about a year and a half ago, so I never experienced the ring road with vehicles on it. And when I learned that it actually did used to have cars on it, I was kind of surprised, because I can't really imagine having a row of parked cars, traveling cars, and all the cyclists and pedestrians that come out here on the summer. So it's just surprising to me that it ever had cars at all, and that should tell you, how I feel about that.
That's a great perspective. Hard to even comprehend it as anything else than what it's been for the last 18 months. All right, this has been great, and I think I'm excited to see the energy in this room. Please bring that to the survey. Again, the more input we have, the better we can support the city in making the right decision on how to move forward long term. All right. Next item. So tennis and pickleball. This came up at the last meeting, and it has come up, previously through the 5-year planning process. An up and coming popular sport, pickleball, but also tennis in general. We're engaged by a stakeholder group since our last meeting towards the beginning of the year, in terms of thinking about logical short-term investments in our tennis facilities. Sadly and shockingly, the leader of that effort, Phil Moore, passed away at the end of last month. But I guess the good news for Phil and his legacy is he sort of started this conversation, and we're gonna see it through and sort of talk it through this process through the Olmsted Community Alliance.
I'm picking up where we left off.
Well, that's good.
We're working together on it.
Okay. Yeah, he was the vocal leader, certainly. But just to sort of start off with the conversation in terms of tennis facilities within Delaware Park, we've got the 8 McMillan courts,
Everything else is ready.
the 4 general bass courts up by Nichols, and 5 courts down by Route 198. So in terms of how the communication's gone with that group, the Conservancy has taken it on board to make some short-term improvements to fix what are grossly damaged tennis posts at the McMillan courts, the 8 courts near Nottingham. So that has been put in our budget for this year to replace all of those posts and basically get the tennis back to its appropriate height in terms of what I understand about people who take their tennis very seriously. Additionally, in that conversation and conversations moving forward is this new sport, pickleball, and its popularity sort of growing year by year. So for those who aren't familiar with it, here's 4 people playing pickleball. It's basically, from what I understand, somewhat of a combination between ping pong and tennis, so it's a bit of a smaller court. And these are the tools of the trade. But again, a very popular sport with young and old. The city of Buffalo does not have any pickleball facilities within its parks. Additional sort of general information with regard to the size and the use of the game, the space that 2 tennis courts take up, you can fit 6 pickleball courts. So there is a benefit in terms of the amount of people that can use the courts in a small space. And again, I just sort of want to sort of introduce information that has come to us through a stakeholder group and sort of start a conversation here about moving forward on exploring introducing pickleball into Delaware Park and its sort of existing tennis resources. Where the conversation has sort of started and I think will evolve from is identifying sort of the most underutilized and poor conditioned courts within Delaware Park, sort of ripe for a new life. But again, there are issues of access and facilities associated with those. But again, just sort of in terms of introducing things at the ground floor and getting a conversation started, I really want to just sort of bring the idea to this group before we really start to explore this more with, again, our partners at the City of Buffalo, the stakeholders engaged. And again, this isn't just a Delaware Park decision, but again, we'll be working with the city in terms of their city parks master plan, in terms of the recreational resources available to all the city residents. But just sort of wanted to introduce the idea. We've been hearing about it time and time again, and wanted to sort of start with the conversation here at this group. So we've got one comment in the back, and then, again, open up for additional dialogue for those of you who aren't familiar with the sport.
So I really like pickleball. I realize I'm not the target audience for pickleball. It tends to be the older, generation, I think. But I play a lot with my retired aunts and uncles, and it's a great sport. And I was always wondering why we don't have pickleball courts. A lot of the places in the suburbs, they've already kind of repurposed some of their courts. I also really like the idea of the location because those courts, nobody's ever on them. and they're really in poor shape. So I think it's a great idea.
Somebody else? Go ahead. Whoever. No, I had been working since last year with Phil Moore on this whole concept idea of how to reuse courts that, like the 198 courts, have been for years now totally unusable for tennis, and they've been pretty much sitting there empty. So the idea came along with the mixed use of the pickleball idea, and we all thought that was just a great idea. And then also, given that the city of Buffalo has no pickleball courts anywhere to speak of, that was I thought was a great kind of thing for a master plan if you're going to redo courts. The other big issue we had then was with the decline of the McMillan courts, and the surfacing is a big problem there, and there's large cracks on there, which Phil and I thought we could fix for the interim, but the net posts were another issue. So we came up with the idea of just extracting the old ones out by cutting them down and then replacing them with new ones, insertable new ones, would be the best fix for that to do. So these things are on the intermediate scale in terms of fixes. I don't know what you can do with pickleball, but certainly the McMillan courts with the tennis will improve that whole playing experience considerably. And the other thing I might add is we are Summer Classic Events hosts this so-called Buffalo City Muni tennis tournament every year. This year is 99, next year is 100. So there isn't a municipality I'm aware of in the country that has a tennis tournament that's been running 100 years. So we would like to see if we can get the courts to the point of where they could be representable for such a big tournament. We want to make it a big event. And it's going to be a tall order. Phil and I are talking about that multiple times on how we could try and extend to some sort of outside funding. We'll have to raise funds to do it, to bring money into park. It's at least a $400,000 plus expenditure to surface them or resurface them. So
Yeah, I guess on that point, I mean, it is typically, resources need to get built up through sort of a planning process and then a fundraising process. So if we're not using this event to sort of celebrate perfect court condition, maybe we're using the event to identify the need and sort of raise awareness on this great facility, this great event, and moving that forward. But I know we're going to continue to work with the city on sort of lining up, resources for, the maintenance of these facilities, which mean sort of capital investment on a continuous cycle. John?
Oh, thanks, Brian, and thanks for having this meeting and also giving your introduction to tennis and pickleball needs that we have right now at Delaware Park. And I do very thankful for Phil Moore for actually trying to get this thing going, get the ball going for what is needed. I know that he was a big tennis guy, and he grabbed me because I'm the big pickleball guy. I'm actually the ambassador for Western New York, specifically the North Towns and the city of Buffalo, for the USA Pickleball Association. As ambassador, we try to grow the number of venues that have pickleball, as well as try to grow the sport, get people to learn what the game is and to play it and to get better at it. So, right, the city of Buffalo is it's like a big question mark. Why haven't they done something anywhere in the city of Buffalo, considering that all around the country, they really have made strides. They've realized that this is the fastest growing sport in the US. And it is not just for very skilled players. I mean, I played tennis for 45 years, and I couldn't play competitive with my wife because she just wasn't there. I tried to get my kids to do it, and it wasn't their skill set. But pickleball, anybody could learn, really, and it's really a strategy game. If you haven't played it and you'd like to learn, please see me before you go tonight, and I would be able to give you some information about how you can learn to play for free out at Pickleball Island, at Grand Island, which has 6 beautiful courts indoors right now. Anyway, with regard to what we envisioned at Delaware Park, because it was a beautiful park when it was developed as a central, not to the city, but to the whole region. And because of the highways, we can get down here very easily from anywhere in any direction. So the advantage of a pickleball is, again, it's multi-generational. And though it's attractive, as Erica mentioned, to older folks. You'll see down in the villages in Florida, they've got 120 pickleball courts. But it's also been very, very popular now with young people. And so it's a multi-generational where you see the grandkids and the parents and the grandparents playing together. And I know many cases where the kids and the parents wish the one day they want to beat grandpa because he's just too good at it. It's not really a power game. It's a great strategy game, a skill game that way. So that's a real big difference in the game. It really promotes camaraderie. And because of the ease of entry into the game, I've seen people, I've played with people that are in a halfway house, or convicted convicts in a halfway house that have grown to love it and just can't wait to play it. It's changed their life. I've seen people with cancer who have now played pickleball and now have a new community group that support the person who has cancer. Down at the US Open in Naples every year, they even have a division where if you're in a wheelchair, their wheelchair division that can play, they get 2 bounces, rather than just the one, but it's amazing to watch people play pickleball on wheelchairs. So the one thing we envision where a lot of the suburbs kind of have the 2 courts and the 4 courts kind of thing around, and they're always, right now, they're very overcrowded. I want to mention the town of Amherst has 4 courts out at Paradise Park. And right now, people have snowblowed them. Amherst has let the nets still on them, and people were playing there today. They play every day as long as it's dry enough to play. They're playing in cold temperature. My wife and I have a kind of 35-degree limit before we go out and play outside. But anyway, very, very popular. And in the summer, the courts you can't even get, you sit there and wait. Another big advantage, tennis. It's like you're going out on a date. You get your partner to go out on a date, or maybe a double date, and 4 people go out, they play tennis for a while, a set, 2 sets, and then they go home. Pickleball is like speed dating. You go with your paddle to a place that you know there's a time they play, and you get right, you just play in. And so you play with these people, you play with those people. It's whether it's 2 on, stay on, and then the next 2 go on, and then winners split. They do all different combinations, but everybody plays with everybody. It's a very accepted norm. So, and I played all around the country bringing my paddle, and if I go to a place where there's a court, I just get in line and I'm out there playing with people I never met before, and it's a blast. So that's a real big advantage of pickleball. And so the one thing I want to mention is tournaments and league play. If you're to have, I would say like 12 to 16 courts built, which can be accommodated by the 198 courts or any of the other courts that are there that are underutilized. But I think Millen obviously want to keep that, I think, as tennis and make that the way Phil dreamed it. But you can have tournaments and leagues. Tournaments right now, and you could have somebody run the tournament and still earn like $40,000-$50,000 for a charity or for whatever reason, and they have them annual around. So it's amazing the people that are attracted to tournaments. And so if you have 12 to 16 courts built, you could have 1 or 2 tournaments in the summer here, and people would love to come from the south up to the north in beautiful Western New York, which has the best summers in the world. You could visit Niagara Falls, and you could build it that way, and they'd be very successful tournaments that you could sustain annually. Another advantage is that you intramural sports between different schools. It'd be a great place to have intramural sports and teach maybe even having like I don't know, I could picture the Buffalo Academy. What's that place called? The Academy School, Buffalo STEM, yeah. Teaching underprivileged kids on Saturday morning, or having some program that like Mary Wilson would love to do, support something like that. So it lends itself to that sort of thing. And there's money available, and I mean for in terms of equipment, paddles and stuff for the underprivileged, I can get all sorts of people to volunteer that if they knew they're doing programs like that. So and again, Erica, I want to just say there's a lot of young people. I play with 20, 30-year-olds that are my friends, my kids' age, and we play competitively all year round. And you do play at different levels too. So it's like tennis. You play at a 2-5 level, you can play at the 4-5 level. It's a big difference in the play. But it's very accepting. People the better players help the lesser players, et cetera, to grow. So again, what you're saying about the number of courts, we're right now a tennis court you can have 2 people or 4 people. You could, that space, if you have a 120 by 60-foot tennis court, you could actually have 4 pickleball courts on that. And so playing doubles, you could have 24 people playing at once, where you can only support, that same area would only support 4 people playing at once. This would be, I just know from experience, would be very, very successful if you did have a central place that people would come and play. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we've heard a fair amount of positive enforcement and sort of at least taking this the next step in terms of conversation. So I think you can look forward to hearing a little bit more about this at our next meeting. To sort of wrap up, and again, I want to just zip through a couple things so I can open it up for some open conversation. An exciting project moving forward in our South District, funded through the council member and Erie County for an inclusive, accessible playground in Cazenovia Park. This was a topic that came up at this meeting, specifically interested in Delaware Park. Sadly, I'm not able to report advancement of a project in Delaware Park yet, but this is a good sign. Things happening in our other Olmsted districts that I just wanted to bring to light here in terms of conversation about these inclusive, accessible playgrounds within the Olmsted Park system. Good news down there. In terms of things that we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, in future meetings, I think next session, we'll get into a little bit of our commemorative program, a little bit about the organization and the events planned for 2022. We're also going to discuss our Olmsted natural areas and our maintenance guidelines associated with that. But I did want to provide some time for people here or at home with new issues that have come up, things that we want to sort of continue our dialogue about. We've got obviously a lot to talk about in terms of things already on the table, but always want to be making sure that we're providing space for new ideas and new conversations as we move forward. So I'll pause for a little bit now. Anybody at home? Anybody? This guy?
Cars out of Ring Road. Are there plans to designate certain places for parking to expand it to allow visitors? Like in June or July, it gets pretty busy. You got people with strollers. I know there was the lot across from Nichols. Has that officially been designated an Olmsted parking lot?
Yeah, so in terms of the existing parking lots, that's St. George's Church, which I think is what you're talking about. That is a designated parking facility. Basically what the survey is gonna do is give people the opportunity to explain either their appreciation for the space and how it's a great benefit to their life, or how much they hate that there is no parking, that they, this, that, and the other. So the survey leaves it open for people to express their concerns. In terms of closing the ring road to traffic, it'd be, I think, a very hard lift for the Conservancy to support as a part of keeping the road closed, adding surface parking lots in the historic landscape. So again, this is going to be information that helps us make decisions about how we move forward. But the idea of surface parking lots on historic property certainly goes against everything the Conservancy stands for. Basically decisions about the ring road will sort of all tie in all of the aspects of access to park and, the value that you can get from using the park. That answer your question, or no? Great. But I guess one of the other things, and potentially part of this larger process we're finding, is that people don't really understand all the parking available to them around the park and in the community at certain times of the year, certain times of places. Medaille College, massive parking lots on their property. Well, that school's closed. The zoo was utilizing that for a shuttle service. There's all sorts of sort of other surrounding areas that, in terms of, if it is you are arriving with in a car, you're able to get into the park without having to literally park on the park to do it. Yeah.
Brian, can you tell us more about the Japanese garden project this spring? Question from Stephanie.
So exciting things moving forward. Don't have a lot of detail just yet, but 2022 is the 60th year of the relationship between the city of Buffalo and Kanazawa, Japan. And 60 is a very significant number in Japanese culture in terms of rebirth. So there is ongoing discussion between the city of Buffalo and the city of Kanazawa on a major celebration during the course of the year. In talking with Susie here, I guess Japan is unfortunately going through some heavy COVID impacts currently. So communication has been a challenge, but there is plans for exciting events throughout the year in the Japanese garden. And one of those things, hopefully, is Japanese gardeners coming to Buffalo to again work with the Olmsted Conservancy staff on improvements. We're thinking about making investments. It seems like we're potentially going to be making investments in the islands area in the Japanese garden. So a lot of details to work out. Not a lot of specifics I can share, but plans will develop and we'll bring them to this group as they evolve. Susie, you're welcome to add to that if you can.
So the gardeners from Kenruken Garden in Kanazawa, Japan, they were supposed to come here during the spring of 2021 to do some improvements on the Sisters Islands and the path leading down to the Three Sisters Islands there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they were not able to come here last year. So they want to come this year, but again, they're really struggling with COVID right now. So it's actually, they close everything down in Kanazawa. So it's very difficult to get a hold of people to find out if the gardeners, when they will be here. A lot has to do with the flights to and from America. And when you go back into Japan, you have to stay for 7 days before you can go back into work. So that's the issue. But the government of Kanazawa does have money for the repairs of the garden. I don't know how much it is, but they do have funding for our garden for the 60th year anniversary. It just might not be this 60th year, it might be next year. It's all when they're going to be available to come in and do it. So hopefully we'll have more news at the next meeting.
Even more exciting things to come. With that, again, if you have any more comments you want to get on the table, raise your hand, but I'm going to run through a couple closeout items so we can get you out of here on time. In terms of our outreach, we keep talking about, we want to sort of, share. This isn't necessarily for you to read through, but in terms of continuing to line up our community groups, our cultural connections, our businesses, our media partners, our schools, our recreation, our churches. If you have any connections that you think should come to the table, please email Zach. I'm going to give you his email address in a minute. I think it pops up soon. But again, so we need to know, who isn't at this meeting that needs to be here? Where can we do a good job of, hitting a lot of people with an advertisement in a window? Are there newsletters we can get into that you know about? We're doing our flyers. We're going to work on doing more door-to-door outreach around the parks, but word of mouth, reaching our non-English speaking communities where we're partnering and continuing to work with Journey's End on improving our job, our work there. But again, thinking about the agenda, we're thinking these quarterly meetings are really valuable. How's the Zoom working? Next meeting, May 4th. But again, Zach Garland, zach@bfloparks.org. If you want to take that down, any thoughts you have about outreach, thoughts about the survey, who we need to connect to, please send all of your notes to Zach and we'll get those incorporated and, you know, turn them into action. Just a couple wrap up things. So again, in addition to the agendas and the outreach, we've got our Facebook group. So this we will send out to everybody. If it didn't go out, I think it already did go out in the invitations. But again, we are looking to, again, standardize these meetings. So they're always going to be on Wednesday night. They're going to be quarterly. The next one for us is May 4th. But exciting news about this year in terms of celebrating anniversaries. 200th birthday of Frederick Olmsted, April 26th of 2022. So that's going to kick off the 200th year of Olmsted. A lot of activities, a lot of exciting stuff. Part of why we're going to bring the development team to the table at our next meeting to sort of talk about some of the other exciting items. So again, we're 2 minutes over. I apologize for that. If there's any last thoughts anyone has, can share them. Otherwise, we'll close out the meeting and see you in 3 months.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody at home. Please get your comments in the chat and look for minutes in the coming weeks.